Hi, welcome back to School of Supernatural Funeral Directing. This is Jesus, the funeral director, Lazarus, video 2. I did the first one. I only get like a certain amount of minutes each video. I'm limited according to YouTube. I can't even do a live stream, which would be easier because it takes forever to download these videos. So we're talking about Jesus. We're talking about the blame game. And I was looking to Jesus for some revelations about funeral directors, especially the new coming funeral directors coming into play. Now, the older generation that I've experienced with my friend and some of his friends, because of the age group, they've dealt with things that they didn't really know how to deal with their grief. I think the new generation now is more, there's a lot more resources. They vlog, they have a lot more witty inventions, just new innovations, all that kind of stuff to keep them happy, but in a way it keeps them distracted to where they still keep that sheath over their heart, to where they have to be this strong person. So rather than being this rock like my friend was, this like where he would just get praised for how well he can handle it together, but then behind the scenes he was he struggled with alcoholism. He was not a nice person. He was very mean, and his personal relationships were very deceptive. He wasn't honest about a lot of things, very judgmental, shut down. He was doing things in his profession that were just, whoa, and then the whole cover up of it and stuff like that's one thing when you make a mistake, but when you're doing things purposely because you can't handle your grief because you've lost that sheath, or you got that sheath over your heart to where you just can't feel emotions, and so you're faking things, and which is sad. I don't blame him. I blame the industry being so hard on him since he was a teenager, and him not having the same resources like the millennials had, and even the younger generation and people, younger funeral directors that are coming into play, where they have more of an upbeat, happy, but at the same time the sheath where they're not feeling the grief. Even though people feel the grief, they're still taught that they have to hold it together. So the new generation is more like, let's hold it together through how many social media likes I have, how many followers, how many cute videos. Hi, I found this new thing. I'm getting this. Look at what I'm doing here, and we just put a video. I hope you guys like it. Which is great. I mean, that's just the generation. It's fun. It's fun watching it. I love watching Little Miss funeral. I think she's inspiring, but at the same time, she doesn't teach anything about really how to deal with grief. Now, she has her own philosophy, but not like how I found, and definitely a testimony like mine coming back from the dead, I don't think she would accept. So either way, grief is not being handled like it should be on how, it needs to be. So let's get back to this because I only got a couple more minutes. So Jesus shows up and Martha's doing the blame game. And how many of you have been at a funeral where everybody's blaming everybody or somebody, and especially God, to the point you cannot say certain things to people even though you know it's true, especially if you're a believer, about spiritual things, because if they get offended, you're in trouble. Because if you say something, they're in a better place, or God has you, God loves you, and they blow up because they're probably could be in the stage of blaming God for whatever has happened to their loved one, So, sorry, I'm trying to hold this and talk to you at the same time. So, and so you have to avoid things like God or the resurrection or any religious other than I'm so sorry for your loss, smiles and pats and hugs, and trying to find something in common outside of thinking about the loved one. Oh, what did the loved one like? Oh, he liked dogs. Oh, I have a dog. That's so sweet. I have a dog. I love my dog. Yeah, my loved one loved cats. So many cats. I love cats. Oh, yes, my cat. And trying to kind of distract him. I don't know. I don't really get invited to funerals because I am such an emotional mess. People don't trust me to be at funerals. But now I'm learning being an emotional mess at the funeral is exactly what Jesus wants. And it's exactly what Jesus wants of funeral directors. That's a different concept. Being an emotional mess at a funeral, as a funeral director. I wonder how that works, because you guys are taught so differently. Here, I'll prove it to you. So, I'm going to prove it to you. So here's Martha blaming Jesus. And Jesus goes in to say, and this is a great one, your brother will rise again. Here's Martha dealing with, if you would have just been here, he wouldn't have died. Blame game. Going through her stage of grief. And Jesus is like, he's going to be alive again. Don't worry. And Martha's like, I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. So Martha's like, yes, I know, eventually, okay? But what does that have to do with my grief right now? I needed you. You weren't here. I sent for you. I didn't hear from you. You didn't call me. You didn't text me. And now he's dead. Now it's your fault. And where's the miracle? Where's the miracle, God? And sometimes they blame funeral directors. Sometimes, don't you get the blame? Like, these people are blaming you, and you're like, listen, I'm doing my job. I wanted to do this job. It's my dream job. I like it. But I had nothing to do with your family member dying. I'm just here to try to make things easier, okay? You know? But they blame you anyways, because they're in that grief. They're in that stage. And sometimes you really have to carry it. Sometimes you have to make sure you keep your mouth shut. How many times you get sworn at? How many times that you get swung at? How many times you get spit on or harassed to the point that you've actually popped a top at somebody or got snippy, because you're like, look, enough is enough, right? Because you're only human. But here's the deal. If someone walks up to you to blame you, you could say things like, it's okay, because they're only sleeping. Oh my goodness, I'm going to be out of a job. Will you? Let's get through this story first, huh? And it's okay if someone comes up to blame, like it's God's fault. It's okay. He's going to come back again. And it's okay if they said eventually, right? But why are you bringing this up now? It's hurting me, like Martha did. And Jesus goes, I am the resurrection and life, and the one who believes in me will live, and even though they die, and whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this? So he goes off to preach a sermon here, and Martha's like, okay. And she's like, do you believe it? Do you think I'm the one? And so she says what everybody says when Jesus comes around when we're disappointed. Do you believe me? Do you trust me? Do you trust me, my lovely funeral director? Jesus says to you, do you trust me? Do you trust that I know what I'm talking about, lovely funeral director? And you're like, yes, Lord, I know you're the Messiah. I know you. And if you don't believe in Jesus and you're listening to him and he's talking to you, maybe that's probably a good sign you should. Lord, I don't even believe in you. Why are you talking to me? But I think I'm funny. So anyways, itchy. And she goes, yeah, I believe you are the Messiah and the Son of God who is to come into the world. And after she said this, she went back and called her sister Mary and said, hey, guess what? Jesus is here. The teacher's here. He's here. And Mary went out and said, if you were here, Jesus, my brother wouldn't die. So sometimes at a funeral, you get not only one person blaming you, you get some other people blaming you. And because they blame God, somehow the funeral director is at fault because they're like pastors. Heaven sees funeral directors as grief pastors. Believe it or not, your job is pastoral. Even though you deal with every aspect of death, it doesn't matter. You are called to be grief pastors. It's so true. It's so pastoral. And back in the day, Jews, they dealt with pastoral, the ministry, like the rabbis in the community, and even today, as well as dealing with the body itself. So it's a whole ministry. Funeral directing is a ministry. Can you believe that? But let's get the ministry straight here. I'm going to tell you. So she comes out and Jesus says, when Jesus saw her weeping and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. You as funeral directors get moved in spirit. I know you do. And you get troubled. You get people into your prep room that are in pieces, just distraught. And you get your moment away from everybody's eye to, let yourself fall apart. And maybe depending on how long you've been a funeral director, you probably have learned not to fall apart. Which is kind of sad, because then you lose the compassion, and you're not supposed to lose the compassion. And you're not supposed to lose the depth of empathy, okay? Because you deal with it so much, you kind of just have to, like being in healthcare, sometimes, you're taught you can't take it personal, you can't let it get to you, but in reality, that's just not natural. We're supposed to let it get to us, because otherwise you're just doing a job. And then you're like, and then you go home and you don't think about it while a patient of yours is fighting for their life in the hospital, and you're, watching Pretty Little Liars, and you get up the next day and you go to work and like, oh, where's so-and-so? Oh, they passed away last night. Oh, okay. Because you see it all the time. So you see death all the time, you grow the sheath. But that is not because Jesus saw death all the time. He saw it all the time. He was a funeral director. Not only was he a minister and a pastor and a miracle worker and the Messiah, he dealt with funerals. He was a funeral director. He was invited to it, everything. He directed it. In fact, there are funerals where he told people what they will be doing and how they will be doing it, and to get out of his way. He showed up on the scene and he kicked people out of funerals who he thought possibly would prevent him from doing what he does best. Isn't that funny? So I call him a funeral director. So when's the last time you're in a funeral and you just lose it? You feel the room and the sorrow and the pain, and you feel all that emotion and the betrayal and the distrust and the disbelief and all the stages of grief going on over and over again. People trying to hold together, trying to be quiet, trying to not be angry, going through all of that. And when have you just let it all come in and be so troubled that you do this? Now watch this, because you're supposed to. You're supposed to be troubled. You're supposed to be moved in spirit. You are never to be moved from this position of being moved in spirit. Even though you're like, hi guys, welcome to my video. Welcome to my vlog. I have some new things. Some of these companies sent me some new things to try out. Things you can order. Things you might not be able to find for the business, but that I found. I've tested it. Blah, blah, blah. Things that you need to know as a funeral director. Blah, blah, blah. Besides that, you need to be moved in spirit. And besides that, you need to be troubled. And I'm going to tell you why. So Jesus, when he saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. And he says, where have you laid him? So show me the body. He asked, and they said, come and see, they replied. Jesus wept. He had a meltdown. When's the last time you were at a funeral and you allowed your spirit to be moved and you allowed yourself to be troubled that you have a meltdown? And why are you not having a meltdown each and every funeral? Because Jesus had a meltdown. He had a meltdown. First, he went into, don't worry, they're only sleeping. They'll come back again. To boom, crying. See, the thing is he knew Lazarus was going to come back from the dead, but he went through all this emotions, and it was completely okay because he had no shame. He didn't feel like he had to be strong. I have to be the rock. I'm the rock. I'm the rock. He knew he was strong. He knew himself and his emotions and his feelings and his moving and his I've had enough of grief was strength enough for them all. And I'll tell you why. So he had a meltdown and everybody's witnessing. And they said, see how he loved him? That's it. When's the last time you had a meltdown where people are like, oh, look at the funeral directors. See how much they loved our loved one? Why is this funeral director having a meltdown? Oh my gosh. I would have a meltdown. This is so moving. And then others said to Jesus, could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying? So blame game. Oh, look at that. He must be fake because he couldn't even keep this man from dying. He obviously doesn't have it together. So when's the last time you've been at a funeral and you had a meltdown where someone's saying, oh, he loved our loved one so much, it's so sweet, and another one goes, oh my gosh, this funeral director can't keep it together. He obviously doesn't have it to get together because last week's funeral, when Aunt Bessie died, he seemed to be fine. She seemed to be fine, you know? And now he or she is having a complete meltdown. Obviously, they don't have it together. You know what I mean? But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what anybody says. Being strong with your own emotions and with yourself, hold on, I'm uncomfortable, provides a way into the supernatural. And Jesus was strong with himself. He did not care. If he believed it would be true, he believed it was true. He did not, oh, I can't say that because I have a non-disclosure agreement, or I can't say that because it's not appropriate for a funeral director to say it. Jesus didn't care. If he thought it needed to be said, he said it, no matter how crazy he looked. No matter what they said about him. Or like, oh my gosh, we don't want him around. They don't care. He did not care. He did not care. He said what needed to be said, and he did. He was true to himself and his emotions and his feelings. Okay, I'm going to hang up because I'm out of time. Look forward to video 3. It's Jesus, the funeral director, Lazarus, video 3, and we will continue this.